Yesterday might have been the longest day we've had here in quite a while, and I'll assure you my intention is not to belabor this day longer than it takes me to share a few comments with you about this bill. And I want to commend Senator from Spartanburg on your persistence in pressing and persuading and about to create the policy, at least of this Senate. And I want to go back just a moment with you all as the chair of the committee that was blessed to have the title that this bill rests within, and the efforts by the senator from Spartanburg to dislodge this bill from that committee over the last year or so or two. Senator from Spartanburg said he'd been working on this for 15 years. I don't know what year that started, but I started paying attention to this when it became a committee, Judiciary Committee assignment. And lo, those many years ago, Senator from Georgetown, y'all might recall, this is how long ago this effort began in earnest over here, was the subcommittee chairman within the Judiciary Committee itself that the next day was going to have a subcommittee on the bill. The persistence or the persuasion, I'll call it pouncing at a perfect opportunity with my absence, going to see my daughter in Greenville at the governor's school. We're talking some time back because she, I sensed, needed a parent to come. I leave and I roll to Greenville, and I'm listening to the Senate as the weird folk in this body do when we're not here. And if you say you don't do it, you are not being honest. But I hear the effort to dislodge and recall that bill from the full committee that passed narrowly, and it did not have a subcommittee that next day, again, which was within his right to do. And so, again, I compliment him for that persistence. Now, it bypassed what effectively I think, and we'll talk about here in a moment, that we have done thereafter and give it our due diligence and try to, as best we can, hear from folks. But that was then, and then we come to another session where, to the senator from Spartanburg's credit, he dutifully writes to all, and as we all do to each other that chair committees or chair subcommittees, a request to have the bill assigned and considered. And so we did that last year. Recall, those of you who served on that subcommittee, and to the senator from York, who is, we've seen and heard much from on this topic, conducted, if you will recall, those of you would not know that except the senator from York, a wonderfully balanced and fair hearing of this bill. Of note that I will point out to you all was another assigned bill to that subcommittee, which was the standalone bill that we, by a vote of 24-19, rejected the amendment from the senator from Charleston, and that to give us what we have uniformly heard from law enforcement, that which they wanted and that which they asked for, and that is enhanced penalty on gun law violations. That bill last year in that subcommittee, to the deference and discretion of the subcommittee itself, I'm not assailing their work, but they did not take that bill up, and they focused solely on the bill that we have before us, and that being the grand bargain that includes something that no one in law enforcement has asked for and no one in law enforcement wants. And that is this permitless carry bill. And so we have labored these last few days. Can I ask now, is it tomorrow yet now? Anyway, hours and hours and hours talking about the balance between our state's current law and where some want to take us, and some do not. But we have heard from lobbying groups how we are an outlier in the country, how we are treading on the rights of our law-abiding citizens, and we are sacrificing our people compared to other states. And I have heard from a number of you. You've all gotten door hangers, perhaps. I am a gun rights sellout. Perhaps some of you other senators are too. I am one who is against the Constitution because of my position. I am against your God-given inalienable rights given to you at birth because I support not their politics, but our police. So forgive me for not standing with those who are from, Texas, Austin, Texas. I don't think I have any constituent in Austin, Texas. This last year, the Young Americans for Liberty, 3267 B Cave Road, Suite 107-65. I've never been to Austin. I don't think I've ever met a Young American for Liberty any more than the younger groups in here. And I'm looking at mostly the pages now, no offense. And anybody else, Senator from York, that's got the Liberty placard or lapel pin, I've never met anybody from Austin, Texas, and I wonder whether if, just like the dark money mailers that you've all gotten, I know of a few, where one was addressed from a place in the upstate where we sent somebody to find out what was at that address. It was an empty building beside a pawn shop. And we found out through the owner of that strip shopping center, he'd never heard of, never rented to that group, mailing out things to my area to say, Rakin, worst thing since COVID. Rakin, caused the pandemic. Rakin, standing in your way of freedom. That's fine, folks. I'm not assailing our First Amendment rights to do and say about anybody whatever you want to do or say, but be a little more honest about it. But you don't have to be, because you get to hide behind the dark money and the group efforts that come to say and push and pull us to do what we want them to do, again, what they want us to do. That's fine. I'm a big boy. I can withstand the assaults, and I have been there, done that before, and perhaps this will be my last stand. And perhaps this time the dark money will win, and perhaps this time the outside politics of pushing us to do something will work. But I rest easy. I rest comfortably. And I rest at night knowing that I am standing not with the persuaders, not with the pushers, but I'm standing with the police officers in this state who, to a person, to an agency, to a department within this state, has said to me uniformly, today included, after we adopted last night, and I voted for the amendment, trying to make better a bill in hopes of giving the police officers cover to say, Rankin, we're for it. Today, with these enhancements that we have tried to make, I haven't heard a police officer say to me yet, Luke, we want it. We're asking for it. Like the governor's sing-song in his re-election night, I like it, I love it, give me some more of it. The country music song, Help Me Somebody, you know what I'm talking about? It's not by Shaggy. Anyway, y'all know what I'm talking about. He didn't sing it nearly as well as some have sang. I won't be one of them that will try. But, point being, even today, concerns. We are muddying the water. We are not clarifying for them. The exchange with this former police officer, retired, now our brother in the Senate, and others today, Senator, the former solicitor. We are not creating clarity. We are creating uncertainty. We are creating more of a morass of who knows what you can do to accomplish what? To make us like the other states who say, and the proponents say, we want to be just like. And so I'm up here just, again, to talk a little bit about this. And I want to, if I can, Mr. Clerk, Mr. President and the Clerk, I want to just show 2 or 4 folks that I want you to be reminded of, the faces of.
As Senator, as that's being provided, I would say that this has been previewed under our requirement.
And that is Chief Long, City of Conway. I'm not going to read verbatim their testimony. I'm not going to play, because we can't, under our rules, play their testimony. But I want you just to see the face and not mine. I don't want my face to be the voice of the opposition that I've heard from. And I dare say the faceless people in Austin, Texas, that aren't going to come here to tell you what the people that we have hired and entrusted to carry out the laws that we pass have said. First voice, again, face belongs to Chief Long. He's been in law enforcement since 1986. He respects our state. He's a product of our state, born and raised here, and prides himself on being a South Carolinian, to the point of that balance between our laws, our rights, and lawful abiding gun ownership and gun safety for their families. His belief, and this was a pretty key term, I thought, that I'd never heard before. My belief is that in our community, we all operate under a guideline of social contracts. If y'all are on that subcommittee, you've heard this, and again, you're not going to hear a verbatim regurgitation of it. But he analogized that social contract to the driver's license that we have and that we're tested to see whether we have safe driving proficiency, hunter safety as well. The goal being, as the senator from Charleston talked about the other day, with the quail hunt or the dove shoot, loading the gun, where do you aim the gun? All folks within the hunting world, the driving world, and now voting safety world have to have and operate under the same guidelines. And so his point, again, was the benefit of and the necessity of the requirement of minimum standard training. Again, I'm not going to talk about all these things we've talked about, but again, the law. What is the law? Where can you possess? Where can you present? When do you have to stand down? When under the Castle Doctrine? When under the various other iterations of stand your ground, but more importantly, what training they have to safely operate that gun. And so his point, without training, people will take for granted that if I'm allowed, I can do what I want to do. And so that social contract, whether hunting, boating, driving, pick your other example, that's our obligation. Next picture is Chief Prock from the city of Myrtle Beach. Again, very, very forceful personality, very forceful statements that she made. And again, just to show you who I'm listening to, that public safety is a shared responsibility, and that our role, just like theirs in our communities, our trusting and in charging them to carry out, it is a shared responsibility. And her position on this bill was that the training that they pursue, and y'all have heard it, we've heard it over and over again in here. Train, train, train. 4 times a year, sled, the various guns that they use, train. And so my kind of joke, but we are effectively holding, with the passage of this bill, our lay folk, our everyday folk, to a totally different standard than we expect out of our law enforcement officers. And her point is that we are asking the public no longer to be required to train and expecting the same result out of them. They ain't gonna train. They don't have to train. And so her view, again, the city of Myrtle Beach's police chief, the rights and freedoms of everyone are supported, but the safety of our communities needs to be the forefront. Next face that I want you just to momentarily focus on, and this Chief Stewart, who was representing the South Carolina Police Chiefs Association, and focused on what I've heard, and you all have heard, that our SLED director, Chief Keel, has said, we are the envy of the country with the law that we currently have, and the ability to protect not only the public, but to protect law enforcement. But they train. He references the 4 types of weapons that they train with, and that they train day and night. This shots fired discussion, I had not heard of that before that subcommittee hearing, where, again, in Anderson, I believe, they've got that program, technology, again, the area, shots fired, they key in on it with other technology, cameras, again, the ability to try to get to an area quicker. That are enhancements to safety of our communities. And not just them, but the safety of the police officers as well. And so his point, again, in unison with the other 2 chiefs of police, is that we need to be able to expect the same out of our law-abiding citizens, the proficiency in how to handle a gun. And then finally, last picture, that is Skip Holbrook, Columbia Police Chief, Columbia Police Department. And again, very briefly, the takeaway from him, uncharted and unclear territory if we pass this law. Personal concern as a citizen and concern as from a police chief's perspective. No training requirement, no minimum standard will do nothing but lead to chaos. And increased danger to them. And that's all from the slides, Mr. President. Thank you for displaying those.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
So, who are we listening to? And what is our goal? And I'm not saying the word cave, Senator Orangeburg, and that's an adjective, perhaps it applies, but just like these officers have said, we are coming at this with the best of intentions. I don't malign the proponents of this bill. I don't malign the folks from Austin, Texas. Your desire to come into South Carolina and do what you have done successfully with money in other states. But who are we to hear from, and who are we to believe if we don't believe those faces, those voices, and dare I say a few more, because in Horry County, as I referenced the other day, a letter from the Law Enforcement Officers Association dated December 5th. And I can't read, but let me just highlight. The repeal would remove the very standard we have in this state to keep our community and visitors safe. Requirements for training and background checks alone provide a framework to assist in the lawful use of weapons and the purchase and possession. They oppose, in the strongest possible terms, for reasons of public safety, our doing away with required training in this bill. And I said it from my desk. I won't read every name, but I dare say to anyone who would like to see, not one of the misguided, perhaps, misinformed, but duly elected, duly appointed, duly hired, and continuing in service with their own training, officers from Horry and Georgetown County have said, folks, keep the minimum standards. That's the law enforcement word. And again, who do I hear? Who do I listen to? And who do you hear? And who should you listen to? That's your own walk. That's up to you. And I dare say I don't intend to or believe that I'm going to persuade one vote different than has been cast thus far. But I think we owe it to the people outside in our homes, in the balcony, and those listening, perhaps the 12 that are listening to us right now. We owe the honest truth to them about what we're about to do and what it's going to do, and own it. Now, the reverse of that is, Rakin, it ain't going to be that bad. It ain't going to be that bad. Pay no attention to them. I invoked the Wizard of Oz the other day, the line, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Listen to the big bad wolf out there, the big bad Oz out there. Pay attention to him. And so that big bad wolf out there tells us it ain't going to be that bad. They're not that many. It's not going to be that big of a problem. Law enforcement will get over it. They'll work it through. It'll work out. It ain't that big of a deal. And this is not Luke Rankin anti-Second Amendment right. I believe in it. I don't, but my wife does have a CWP. Any of you who know Lindsay would not be any more surprised to know that. Not Annie get your gun, Lindsay get your gun. She don't need no gun. But I hunt. My brother hunts. I love the right to bear arms. But to the point that, and I'm not going to go through ad nauseum, but the point that the reality of this bill being called something suggesting that anyone daring to say or question or pause in the adoption of it, that it is a constitutional right that we are infringing upon by insisting on law enforcement being given the tools that they so deathly and fatally and desperately are calling for, is not an abridgment of the Constitution. Chief Justice Massey from Edgefield quoted, Chief Justice Harpootlian from Richland, again, the very case perhaps, I don't know if it was this one with Anthony Scalia, but again, the law says, the Supreme Court says, you have a right, effectively, like Chief Long said, a social contract. The law requires certain things out of you. The Constitution requires the allowance of certain things, but they are not mutually exclusive. And so the Supreme Court has defined with precedent the right to do what we have done before. So the law doesn't say it's unconstitutional to keep South Carolina's existing CWP. If that were so, folks, if this were the unconstitutional carry bill, why hasn't it been overturned since we passed it 20-some years ago? Why hasn't someone from Texas come down here to challenge the constitutional veracity of that law 20 years ago? It is because it ain't unconstitutional. And so no aspersions to those who believe that this is a constitutional right. Some of you know better that the Constitution doesn't say no states you don't have a social contract and no states you can't require. So in the vein of, and I'm going to wrap up here in just a second, I want to hearken back to the exchange with the Senator from Edgefield and my sincere endorsement of and stated from my desk as I was asking him, the laudable goal of training and the laudable goal of giving the officers the ability to assess before they get into a mess with someone bearing. And that is the topic of training. And so we are undoing the requirement. We're going from 21 to 18. Some are offended by that on its face. Perhaps that's not as bad as the fearful folk would suspect. There is a disconnect. Effectively, the federal government allows 21. So there's a little difference, 18 versus 21. I don't see that as a big problem. But what is the biggest offense here and the biggest problem that officers tell me that they will suffer loss of lives is the lack of mandatory training. And so my exchange with the senator from Edgefield, did you know, I will remind y'all, after doing away with their laws, just like we are on the cusp of doing here, despite our effort to incentivize with a carrot or a stick, the real reality will be you will see a dramatic decline in those who will say, the law doesn't require me to do it, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm not assailing those who will hereafter not want to do it under the belief that that's not the law, therefore they don't have to abide it. Good people, smart people will do it anyway. Smart, good people already with their families have great training, I'm sure. But if passed as prologue in other states, folks, Georgia, drop of 60%, Oklahoma 54, Texas 43, Florida 64, Ohio 71, Tennessee 53% decrease. I voted for that amendment because I think that makes this bill better, but it does not speak to the minimum requirements being a requirement. We are hoping that people will be their best. We are hoping that people will be as trained as our law enforcement officers are. But that's a big hope, folks, and it's a big bet. And perhaps time will prove that there will be no problems with the lack of training. But you can't ignore, in those states that have passed this, and the increased incidents of homicide and gun-related violence and gun-related injury, you cannot escape the trajectory of those statistics. And so, look around. Has it worked? And what do you look to determine how has it worked? And so either the stats are wrong, and in Indiana, where press coverage says over the stern objections of law enforcement, and that is the adjective in the press release, stern objections, stern criticism from their state police superintendent. They did it anyway. And in Indiana, handgun licenses and training dropped. So, Rakin, you're ignoring half of the gain here. You're ignoring the win here. The governor, again, in the state of the state last week, asked for what? Enhanced penalties for gun law violations. He didn't ask for open carry without permit. Senator Campson, senator from Charleston, asked this body for enhanced penalties of repeat offenders with gun violations. 24 of you said no. 19 said yes. And so we've got now effectively, respectfully, but honestly, a gun to our heads to pass a bill to give law enforcement something they don't want, haven't asked for, in exchange for something that they desperately need. That's the prerogative of a legislative body. Give them not what they want, give them what we want. And so when we pass this bill, and when we go to our homes, and when we talk to our brothers and sisters in our churches, in our home communities, but more importantly at our police stations, our sheriff's offices, ask them, where were they? Why didn't they come to Columbia when these posted, noticed hearings were taking place? Why didn't they come and tell you that they were against it? Maybe they'll tell you they were for it. But more importantly, to me in Horry County, why didn't you come and tell me that you were for it? Where were you? And so, again, by default, the only four faces I've got, two of whom are in my area, one in Anderson, one in Columbia, took the time, took it upon themselves to say what you know in your heart of hearts is the truth. You are jeopardizing us, you're hamstringing us, and you are cramming something down our throats legally that we don't have a clue how to enforce. You have not clarified anything. You have muddied the water, and now you're asking me, Mr. or Mrs. Law Enforcement Officer, to step into a situation where I don't know who's on my side and put myself at risk of harm, injury, or death, and expect what Chief Prock said, the same results of their training, their expert, repetitive, continuing gun education out of somebody that from now on won't have one iota idea other than their self-motivation to learn, to do, and to be safe. And God, I pray that everyone who picks up a gun will do just that. And to the CWP holders right now, 40-some-odd thousand of you, God bless you for the training. And I hope that I'm wrong, that these stats prove in South Carolina totally differently, that we have truly incentivized. But I'll be shocked if it is the case. So, folks, I'm going to wrap up and urge you not to vote the way Luke Rankin votes. But talk to your officer. And again, I made the point about every law enforcement officer that I saw come into Columbia to testify. I don't know whether they're under oath or not. Would their testimony be any different? Are they recognizing just the political expediency? And is it going to jeopardize them? And if they'll tell you straight, like the sheriffs have done, the police chiefs have done, Senator, you know they're not going to be happy, because what we've done is not listen to them. And we're going to stand with our men in blue. We're going to stand with our women in blue. Folks, we stand with them only when it's convenient. We listen to them only when it's convenient. And that is a travesty in our state. We want to hear from you when it's convenient. We don't want to give you what you want unless it's convenient. And folks, we are putting our best in blue in harm's way and making them take something that they don't want and have not asked for. But that is our choice. And so we all get a vote. God bless this country. God bless my ability to come speak to each of y'all. And God bless what we do and who we're here to protect, who we're here to reward, and who we are here to stand by. And for me, that's my law enforcement. That's my police chief. That's my sheriff from Horry County, not from Texas.